thank you all for attending this event, which I'm sure will lead to some stimulating discussions. That certainly is the intention for today. This is a key point for the media and a time for the media and the creative sector in Scotland, as the BBC Charter renewal process offers the possibility of change across a range of issues critical to Scotland's future. The Scottish Government and indeed the Scottish Parliament now have a formal role in the Charter renewal process, and we can now play our part in shaping our culture and media for the next 10 years and beyond. And through our participation in this process, we will have the opportunity to set out an ambitious programme of change that will benefit the people of Scotland and deliver better services to our communities, as well as help realise the ambition of the BBC and other broadcasters and producers in Scotland. And the quality of output we are capable of producing in Scotland makes me optimistic for what we can achieve collectively through this process. At the heart of this optimism lies my firm belief that a high-quality, independent broadcaster is both achievable and critical to the future health of Scotland, not simply in relation to the media sector or in supporting Indigenous independent production, important as those issues are, but across the whole canvas of our national life. And that is why it's such a critical moment for the media and Creative Scotland, and why I am determined in leading, contributing to and enabling discussions and negotiations that will help shape the future of the BBC. Over the past few months, I've met with a range of individuals and organisations with an interest in the future of broadcasting in Scotland, and as part of today's discussion, I would like to set out what I've heard so far. Firstly, that the structure of the BBC needs to change in line with the constitutional, political and social change across the UK in the last 10 years. Secondly, that there is a need for increased representation in TV and radio services for the BBC to provide in Scotland. Thirdly, that the important role additional platforms can play in both addressing the issue of representation, but also in building, importantly, a sustainable production base. And also, finally, that now is the time to be ambitious. And one of the things that has encouraged me most is that in listening to this feedback from my discussions with a range of people, it also resonates with the BBC in Scotland. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that it is critical that they share our vision in driving forward an ambitious agenda that can build on their talent and successes. 2 years ago, I outlined my vision and ambition for culture in Scotland when I delivered the Talbot Rice lecture. With that ambition comes the conviction that public funding of the arts is a fundamental good, and that we want the opportunity to take Scottish culture to new heights, carried on a wave of optimism, energy and confidence. And that principle is equally applicable to broadcasting today. And the principle of a public service broadcaster is one that I will strongly defend. We have developed a model of public service broadcasting which is internationally respected, and it is important to maintain this reputation. And the standard which has been set through the public service broadcasting system in Britain includes a broadcaster whose primary mission is that of public service, speaking to and engaging our citizens. However, public service broadcasting should also acknowledge that it is part of and contributes to a wider broadcasting network. A good public service broadcaster must be able to invest, nurture, innovate and experiment, as well as able to produce high-quality content. And the independence of the public service broadcaster to make appropriate editorial and commissioning decisions is also crucial to the success of that model. Earlier this month, as we know, the BBC published a paper setting out their initial thinking with regards to the UK Government Green Paper. This paper acknowledges what we already know, that in Scotland, the BBC has not been able to provide a service which delivers a high satisfaction rating. Only 48% of people indicated that they are satisfied with the BBC in Scotland. And the BBC's paper also sets out the constitutional and political changes which have happened since the last charter and the changes required to reflect this. Acknowledgement that change is needed is welcome, but it does not go far enough. Indeed, it is barely playing catch-up. The proposals will bring the BBC to a position reflecting the political and social position of Scotland, not now, but catching up where they should have been over a decade ago. Alongside these proposals, it was announced that there would be a Scotland editor for news and current affairs. All of this could have been delivered out with the charter renewal process. And while I appreciate the challenges faced by the BBC following the financial settlement imposed by the Chancellor, this is all the more reason to innovate, to find new ways of doing things, to create a service that is representative, but also based on creative collaboration. And I believe that the BBC in Scotland shares our ambition. And this is the time when we can develop a collective agenda across Scotland, focusing on the issues which really matter to audiences. And by working collectively, we can deliver a more ambitious and better resourced BBC, contributing to a vibrant and sustainable sector. We should focus on building on our collective successes, whether this is in innovative partnerships, such as that between the BBC and MG Alba, or new approaches to audiences, like the work STV is doing on viewer-centred content. So today's event is not about setting out a fully formed, predetermined vision of what the future should be. For the Scottish Government are equal partners in this review, and our work will not end with the deadline for responding to the UK's government's Green Paper. We, as I've secured, are part of this process, and we will continue to engage with you and others throughout the review, refining the scope and the scale of our collective ask in order to inform and shape the wider debate over the months ahead. As I've already mentioned, my officials and I have met as many interested parties as possible over the past few months in order to get a clear sense of what matters to the industries. These include the UK Government, Secretary of State John Whittingdale, and this week James Purnell, who's leading on the review for the BBC, and I'm also due to shortly meet Tony Hall. Throughout this, we've heard a wide range of views, from maintaining the status quo to calling for charter renewal to instigate a public broadcasting revolution. If you've yet to make your views known, then today is the opportunity for you to contribute to the debate. For those who have already contributed, use today to drive that agenda forward. As many of you be aware, the First Minister recently delivered the alternative McTaggart lecture to the Edinburgh International TV Festival, setting out some of our current thinking. And I'm going to add a bit more detail to those ambitions to help lead the debate we hope to have today. The structure of the BBC is a key driver that will help deliver an organisation better able to reflect the nation which it serves. If we want the BBC in Scotland to better reflect our national life, I believe it should operate under a federal structure. This would also allow for the development of a fully independent system of assurance, and I will be working to ensure that this view is considered through the view of governance announced by Mr Whittingdale last week. Our proposal of a federal structure would be of benefit not just to Scotland, but also to the wider nations and regions. And under such a structure, there would be a unitary board for each nation with a mixture of BBC staff and independent members. And I know that this is also a priority for my ministerial colleagues in Wales and Northern Ireland too. This model could also potentially be extended in England to address similar issues of representations, with regional boards for Northern England and the Midlands, for example. This model would be based on a transfer of budgets and would not incur any great additional costs, but importantly would encourage a greater degree of independent decision-making, not just in relation to commissioning and editorial decisions, but also over staffing structures and the wider running of the organisation, ensuring that resources can be stewarded intelligently in a way which is appropriate to the context they are being used, equipping the BBC in Scotland with more tools to deliver a high-quality service. Now, a lot was made in the media of the proposal we have for an additional channel in Scotland. And while I know that creative and media sector in Scotland is more than capable of producing good quality, globally relevant content that has wider network potential, it is not the simple existence of a channel in broadcast or digital form which is of key concern for me. It is more what the concept of a channel represents, a new platform for producers across Scotland of many backgrounds, from independent to the BBC and STV, to showcase their talent and creativity, not only to Scotland, but across the UK and internationally. New television and radio platforms are the accelerator through which we can improve the sustainability of our production sector and make it more representative of life in Scotland. Now, interestingly, the viewing figures of MG Alba is in excess of 600,000 viewers that consume output, many of them in a language they don't even understand. And this demonstrates the need for more representative output. And that's even when the numbers of additional viewers watching only sport is taken into account. However, this is also a much more powerful model than just viewing figures. BBC Alpha is a true partnership approach, seeing the BBC use resources cleverly to deliver high-quality, independently produced programmes which clearly are a hit with audiences. And this approach has seen new producers gain an increasing level of exposure to commissioning editors and has helped to build confidence in the quality of their work across the sector. And that is critical to nurturing, developing and retaining talent in Scotland. And this model has a wide impact. This month I visited the set of Bannon and Sky, which is produced by Chris Young of The Inbetweeners. And I saw for myself how the filming of the series was having a positive effect, not only on the local creative sector, but also on the community as a whole, who were engaged in the project, some quite literally as their houses became sets for the day. Now, I think the idea of having wider impacts, particularly on skills and training and trust and commissioning and experience, those impacts can operate to scale. And what I have in mind when I consider the potential benefits of an extra channel, the transformative effect which having a platform for content can have upon a whole creative economy, society and culture. But it also goes further than that. Authentic, original stories and documentaries can have a positive effect for the whole of the UK. If forming part of the UK network provision, high-quality homegrown programmes can enhance the quality of the UK schedule, alongside similar content from England, Wales and Northern Ireland, it can increase the subtlety and diversity of the content which we are able to consume. Audiences across the UK demand more than a one-size-fits-all view of the world. And this is a new approach to a UK network, and one which would better represent the social and political changes we've seen in the last 10 years, and where in a global world, audiences reach for the original experience of authentic diversity. I would also like to address the question of editorial control. And let me be completely clear here. I am fully committed to defending the principles of a high-quality public service broadcaster. Foremost amongst these is the independence from government of editorial and commissioning decisions. What I do want to ensure is that the BBC in Scotland is equipped to make decisions with a full understanding of the context in which it operates, something which it has been equipped, it's not been equipped to do to its full capacity before. And it is on this basis that I would call for full editorial control to be passed to Scotland as a mark of trust, that when equipped with these new tools, the BBC in Scotland can make the right decisions, and this will benefit the quality of media output. And while these proposals are ambitious, they are achievable. Other nations and regions across Europe have managed to address similar issues of representation. In the German model, for example, a federal system in state broadcasting works very effectively, with regional and local content adding texture to the national network, and a distributed model of news and current affairs coverage, providing an excellent example of how shared services approach can help manage resources effectively. And in Scotland, we have our own successes. STV is flourishing and undertaking cutting-edge digital work in the fields of data collection and user-centred content. The take-up of local TV has also exceeded initial expectations. STV also demonstrates the value of having the editorial, budgeting and commissioning control to take decisions in their national context. And the success of Scotland Tonight, both through the period of the referendum and continuing thereafter as a programme, has been quite rightly widely praised, demonstrating the appetite for high-quality news and current affairs which is relevant to the Scottish perspective. And STV have also taken this further through the news offering of the local TV franchise, which provides a mix of local, national and international stories with increasing cooperation between channels. And this also demonstrates the value of a federal model on a more focused scale than could be achieved for the BBC as a whole, for example. It also is important to recognise that the public service broadcasting in Scotland includes Channel 4, whose remit on establishment was to be experimental and push boundaries. And while the level of investment directly into Scotland in programming making is disappointing, the channel continues to play an important role and contributes to Scotland in other ways. I would hope that through an enhanced and more sustainable production sector in Scotland, one that produces high-quality programmes, we will see participation in new platforms and production from Channel 4 increase. A critical part of the financial sustainability of the BBC, in addition to the licence fee, is the ability to participate effectively in the secondary broadcast market, including through the sales of formats and programmes internationally. And this element of the BBC also has a key role in encouraging independent production and supporting the internationalisation of our independent producers by providing them, in partnership with the BBC, with a route to market. BBC Worldwide plays an important role in supporting activity and providing an income stream for the corporation. Such an integral part of the PSB model should not be privatised. And in a federal model, I believe the BBC Worldwide element would continue to work. The proposals on BBC Studios we heard last week also need to be considered in this context, ensuring that they contribute rather than diminish the vibrancy of the independent sector. And it's now critical that we work collectively to identify those issues which will benefit Scotland most. For our negotiations with the UK government and the BBC in London to be successful, our ask needs to be rigorously prioritised and have the sector in Scotland behind them. I believe we can achieve this. Current proposals, such as a Scottish editor, show that the BBC is catching up with devolution. We really need to be more ambitious to ensure we have a solution which is fit for purpose, at least for the next decade. So before I conclude, I invite you to begin your discussions. I'd like to reflect on what we need to get out of today. It's great to be able to have informed conversations on these critical issues and at this time. And I welcome the time all you have committed to further developing the agenda today. However, in building consensus or indeed an understanding of what the priorities are, I think we need to make sure that we develop proposals that we have tested rigorously, not just to ensure that they are practical and reliable, but also to ensure that resources are used to deliver the widest possible benefit to the people of Scotland. And I would like you to take that thought into your discussions today. This is not just about reflecting the here and now in Scotland. This is about equipping this nation to have a media sector through the BBC Charter renewal that provides audiences what they want in an ever-changing world, but equips the sector, the broadcasting and screen sector in Scotland, to take an innovative approach, to be bold, to be ambitious, and to shape the future. And ladies and gentlemen, if we don't shape the future ourselves, it certainly will be shaped for us. I'd rather do the former rather than the latter. Thank you.